Welcome to the Steve Show. Today I want to talk about pricing, whether it's a product or a service. How do you figure out your price? I find so many business owners, they underprice their product or service. And even if you can lower your price, how do you know? Let's find out. So often I talk to business owners and they start looking at their pricing, and a lot of times they spend their time looking out at what else is going on, which is good. You want to look at like what you would call a competitive analysis, like what's going on. I'm not saying to ignore that. However, I am wanting to talk about how do you start looking and reflecting at yourself. And I want to talk about several different stories, and I will talk a little bit about product versus services. So let's talk a little bit about services for a second. So for myself, as I started coaching and speaking, you start to look at your time, right? You're evaluating what time you're putting in. And when I first started coaching, I just started opening it up. And then I was helping people, so more people were coming, and all of a sudden I have a, pretty good coaching practice going on. And my prices were lower, much lower than they are now. And so in order to hit a certain mark, if I want as growth, then I hit a number where I started having a lot of clients. And now my time was getting gobbled up. And so in this case, how this comes back to pricing is I was underpricing myself, filling it up. It becomes a little bit of supply and demand, if you know a little bit about economics, right? If I keep, if you have a huge demand and then you're filling up, then tends to have the price goes up, and it makes it a little bit more limited. And what happens is you start for a coach or anybody where you're tracking your time, any of you that are if you're a contractor, a freelancer, if you're a coach, consultant, speaker, you're charging for where you're going. And even if you're not charging by the hour, you're accumulating a set amount of time. Like if you have to go provide a service. Well, what happens if that gobbles up all your time and you have no time for your own self-development? So what was happening to me was I didn't have time to read as much. I didn't have time to go to conferences and learn more things. I didn't even have time to come outside. Like today we're shooting this outside because I love being out in nature and connecting and slowing down, and it allows me to think. That's why, have you ever gone on a holiday or a vacation and then all of a sudden you had all these new ideas or things you're like, man, I should have thought of that months ago, but you didn't have the time to calm your mind to even give yourself the opening to have new breakthroughs and new creativity. And so having that time for yourself actually allows you to be of higher service, of being able to have, expand your expertise, to be able to read and learn new things, to be able to slow down and think differently. And so what it's all coming down to, and what I'm going to say here, is to increase your price so that you can have more time. So you have fewer clients, but you have more time for yourself, which in turn will give a better service to your clients because you're able to, be more calm, not be as stressed out, have further education. So as I've increased my prices and reduced the amount of clients I have, my clients are having more profound change in their life. They're having, better service from me because I can have a higher quality. Right? If you think about many things, like when things are higher price, tends to be less people, and then you can care for those people even more. Like even going to a restaurant. If you go to a restaurant where it's a lower cost, they're gonna come up and they're gonna take your order real fast. You'll be lucky if you see them again. Maybe you see them once or twice. They check in on you if they do a really good job, but they're running and running. And then I've been to really high-end restaurants where they have 3 or 4 service people just for your table. And I'm talking like really high-end. Like if you talk about like the French Laundry, and at that point you're spending like $500 per person, but it's an experience. But their business is thriving. It takes months to get a reservation there. They're always full because they have amazing food, but they're able to push their culinary ability because they have the funds to have more staff, to have more creativity, to have more time to think. Because if you have more staff as a small business owner, then that means you have more time to think differently, to go try new things out, if it was a restaurant, to try new dishes, and you can do things differently. It doesn't mean that you have to go all the way high end. There is a market for the turn and lower service So it depends on where you are. So I'm not saying this as an end all, like everyone should raise their price and everyone should be high end. That's not what we're talking about here. But what we are talking about is the opportunity to make that possible. So, and there's a frog there, wants to be in the video. That's pretty cool. So, the idea is to look at what you want. So that's what I want to come back to. What is it that you want in your business? Do you want to work a crazy amount of hours and have this big turn, or do you want to be able to have more time? So the calculation I would look at is, how many clients do you really want that fit on your calendar and give you enough time for self-development? And then start to look at how much money do you want to make? And then divide that amongst the amount of clients that you have and see what the fee looks like. And then adjust accordingly based on what you need. But you start thinking that way. The same with a product. I was recently with a friend of mine that I haven't talked to in a while, and then we had dinner, and he was talking to me about a new product that he's patenting, and then we were talking about price. And in that price, the competitors were like a few dollars cheaper than he was at where he could get it manufactured at this point. And he was really worried about it. He wanted to try to match the price, but his product is far superior, far superior. It saves time. It makes the clients happier, it's customers. But in this, like with the use of the product, they're having a better experience. And they would, what I looked at, they would greatly pay, in my mind, double, because the experience was like 10 times as good with this new product. And so, see, sometimes we can get caught up, and they were not launching the product. I said, what's stopping you from launching the product? And he said, well, the price. We're trying to work really hard to negotiate with our manufacturers to get the price down to what everyone else is. And what came up, because it was a husband and wife working on this, his wife said, well, I want to be able to help everyone. And if we price it too high, some of the customers won't be able to afford it. And then I said, well, you're stopping yourself from having this business. So if you can't get the manufacturer any lower, then you're stopping your whole business, and then you can't help anyone. You can't help anyone. And so in that case, it's like you should charge more, go for the higher end customers in that. And it doesn't have to be super higher end in their case. They only have to increase the price a little bit. But even if they doubled the price, they still were going to be affordable for many people in that industry. And what would happen then is, I told her then she could sponsor, some other customers that couldn't afford it. She could do some stuff to give back to the community, but she could choose to do that when she had the revenue herself. You're not going to be able to have a chance at all if you don't launch your company, or you don't get the right amount of business, and you don't price yourself accordingly. So don't price yourself out of business. In that case, they wouldn't even launch the product. What would be the detriment of that? And then all of a sudden she started to realize, and she said, Steve, you're totally right. I can't be affordable maybe for everyone, but I can be affordable for a lot of people. And then I can help the less fortunate over time when I have more funds, because my business is successful. So these are some considerations in pricing that you need to think about. What's going to work for you? I always come back to that. So many of us make decisions based on the customer, which I'm not saying is bad. You want to think about your customer, but you also need to take care of yourself. That's what a true win-win is. If you win and the customer wins, then it's a match. If you have to lose for the customer to win, that's not a good business model. Over time, it will fail, because you'll get upset about it. You'll even close. Businesses will fail. I've went to businesses and they were not charging enough, and their business they were gone, went out of business. So, and then if the customer loses because you charge too much and it gets out of hand, and then they go somewhere else, then you're going to lose. So you have to balance that. So these are just, again, brainstorming. There's not one way to do this, but I hope today I gave you a few ideas just to start thinking differently about pricing. Think about what you need and how many clients you actually want, and then figure out if you divide that, what would be the price? How much money do you need to make? How many clients would you like to serve? And divide that. And then look at your pricing of your product. What is appropriate for you to have a successful business, and then see if the market will bear that. If you have more questions about pricing, I'd love to get more specific on this. So for future videos, please let me know what's going on. What are your challenges around pricing your business, services or products? And I'd love to chime in and get a thread going here with this video, and we can type back and forth. And then if there's enough, then I will gladly do another episode going even deeper on pricing. Until next time, remember, choose gratitude and create freedom.